Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's show. Because today on the show we have the one, the only, Mr. Ralph Bond. He'll be joining us here in just a moment. He is our science and technology trends correspondent, and that is a long fancy title. That means, hey, the stuff that you're noticing or you may be reading about, he's going to cover and he's going to break it down for you. And science and technology tend to really get into everything. So you never really know what the shows are going to be about. But as Ralph is going to tell you, hopefully they're going to be good. Like not good as in like quality good, but good as in like you're going to feel good after today's program. That's our hope. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, reviews, topics, links. Of course, show notes are big because Ralph spends a lot of time really going through and including links, videos, just anything that might help you in your journey through these stories. He compiles them right there in one place. We have a segment at the top of the website right there. It's Ralph Bond, and that's all of his shows, all of his show notes, and usually I think it's like the last 3 or 4 are easily listed, with the other ones easy to be kind of identified. So there you go. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring Ralph on and get this whole thing started. So once again, he's a longtime Computer America contributor, and of course he's an all-around great guy. Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How have you been?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thank goodness. Here in the Northwest, like many parts of the country, we were talking about this before the show went live, that the heat waves that we've had in Portland are just, for us in Portland, to have 105, 106. It was insane. We've had 4 or 5, and to have that 4 or 5 days in a row. So today is going to be 81 degrees. We're all just dancing with happy.
And I
joy,
hear
joy,
some
joy.
rain might be heading your way too. So
absolutely, isn't that something? Oh my gosh! But anyway, it pales in comparison to the struggles of the temperature in Texas and other places like that. So anyway, hopefully, if you don't believe in climate change yet, folks, I give up. But anyway, what we're going to do right now, as Ben was alluding to, is we're going to make you feel good. Okay, we're going to make you feel good in the areas of robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it, across the board. I look for stories that are sometimes don't get mainstream news coverage, but they are uplifting and interesting and positive about where science is taking us, science and technology. And so that's what we've got for you today. Story number 1 and story number 4 are really geeky. I'm going to warn you right now, folks. It makes my brain melt. But stories 2 and 3 are much more human approachable. So we'll have some fun with this. It's a real mixed bag today.
Absolutely. And again, the show notes. If you're confused on anything after we do our first pass and try our best, you can go ahead, find the show notes and find the sources and read through it yourself. And also, we have the video portion where you can see the articles. We'll show videos and stuff like that as we go along. But yeah, and Ralph, I don't know what you're talking about. Story number 1, it's simply going from 4 to 5. I mean, it's not that hard. It can't be, but please, let's go ahead and do story number 1.
And this is a story. A lot of times the stories Ben and I do each Friday are kind of obscure, I guess you could say, or they fly well under the news cycle. This one did get a lot of attention because of its profound implications. So the headline here is scientists at Fermilab, we'll explain that, are closing in on a fifth force of nature. In fact, there's a lot to unpack here, and we'll explain this. There's another article with a headline that's kind of fun, too, that I referenced in the show notes. Headline there is a weirdly wobble. Let me try that again. A weirdly wobble muon particle might revolutionize physics by revealing a fifth force of nature or another dimension. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, that's a story in Business Insider. I recommend you look at both that and the BBC News story that are referenced in the show notes. But with that said, let's get into this. So talking about a fifth fundamental force of nature, but wait a minute, time out. What are the four fundamental forces of nature that are accepted and established in science? Okay. And all of these forces we're going to talk about, you experience every day, and they can be reduced to just four categories. And I've got a link for you there. There's a little chart that shows the four forces. So number one, gravitation or gravity. Okay. That's easy. Mm-hmm. Number two, electromagnetism, or you could call it electromagnetic force. Well, okay. The electromagnetic force, also called the Lorentz force, acts between charged particles like negatively charged electrons and positively charged protons. Opposite charges attract one another, while like charges repel. That feels comfortable, feels familiar, right?
Yeah, just any magnet, same principle, right?
There you go. Then now 3 and 4 get kind of geeky and weird, at least for me. So number 3, the strong force, also known as the strong nuclear force. The strong nuclear force, also called the strong nuclear interaction, is the strongest of the 4 fundamental forces of nature. And this melted my mind. Here we go. It's 6,000 trillion. That's 39 zeros after the number 6. Wow.
Yeah.
Times stronger than the force of gravity. So it's again, 6,000 trillion times stronger than the force of gravity. And that's because it binds the fundamental particles of matter together to form larger particles. It holds together the quarks that make up protons and neutrons. And part of the strong force also keeps the protons and neutrons of an atom's nucleus together. Okay.
Really goes to show why, as powerful as, hamsters running on wheels are to power things, we're really going after fusion and fission when it comes to powering stuff, because that force is so strong and releases so much energy when you do combine things or tear things apart. So just think like nuclear power. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that 6,000 trillion is impossible to wrap your head around. Anyway, number 4. The weak force. So we just did the strong force. Now we're going to do the weak force. The weak force, also called the weak nuclear interaction, is responsible for particle decay. This is the literal change of one type of subatomic particle to another. So there's your 4 forces of nature that science has established, and it's established and understood and all this good stuff.
Right.
Now
it's and just real quick, the strong force is stuff that keeps the stuff in the middle of the nucleus together, and then my understanding is the weak force is the things that keep the electrons in orbit around the atom. So the stuff in the center and the stuff on the outside. That's the strong and the weak force. But yeah, and I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want to get that out because that's how I explain to to the people around me. But yeah, now there's maybe a 5th.
Yeah, and that's where we're going here. So okay, what is this 5th force? And what I'm about to read here has been the current thinking about it to date, right? The 5th force of nature is a hypothetical force that is not explained by the 4 known forces of nature we just outlined, okay? And prior to this latest discovery making the news that we're going to talk about, some physicists have claimed to have found evidence of a 5th force emerging from a helium atom and other experiments. The 5th force may be a manifestation of a more fundamental force or a parallel dark sector of the universe. For folks, I don't even begin to claim to understand this. This is, like I say, way out of my brain league. But
dark sector. Yeah, it sounds like something from like a Marvel movie, Dark sector. Yeah.
Star Trek or something. I mean, just like, what? But in the show notes, come out to computeramerica.com. Show notes again. We have links if you want to dive deeper and gain a better understanding of this, better than I have. Certainly, we've got the links there for you. You can dive as deep as you want. So, okay, with all that said, here's the big news. Scientists at the Fermilab, that's Fermilab, believe they could be nearing the discovery of a new 5th force of nature. Okay, so again, we have so much to unpack here. Wait a minute, time out. What's Fermilab? Okay, Fermilab National Accelerator Laboratory, aka Fermilab, located near Chicago, is the United States Department of Energy National Laboratory specializing in high energy particle physics. These are some real brainiacs, okay? Now, they have found more evidence that subatomic particles called muons, that's muons, are not behaving in the way predicted by the current theory of subatomic physics, also known as the Standard Model of Particle Physics. So they've discovered these muons, subatomic particles, in their experiments are not behaving in a way that would be understandable based on the four known forces of nature, right? And so this is causing them to go, well, what's going on here? Well, wait a minute. We've got to unpack a couple of more things. First, what is a muon? Again, muon. The muon is one of the fundamental subatomic particles, the most basic building blocks of the universe as described in the Standard Model of Particle Physics. Muons are similar to electrons, but weigh more than 207 times as much. And again, there's a source there to get deeper into what muons are. And then you have to ask yourself, and I did, again, this is a sequential unpacking. All right, that's great. Muons. Well, what's the standard model you're talking about? Okay, the Standard Model of Particle Physics is the current best theory to describe the most basic building blocks of the universe. It explains how particles called quarks, which make up protons and neutrons, and leptons, that's leptons, which include electrons, make up all known matter. And again, we have another link there if you want to dive deeper into that. Okay. With all of that under our belt, here we go. Let's go back to Fermilab. Let's go back to the big news. It's very recent here. In an experiment with the catchy name G-2, the researchers accelerated the subatomic particles called muons around a 15-meter diameter ring, and that's shown in the show notes image. And that, by the way, comes to 49 feet 2 inches, where they circulated about 1,000 times at nearly the speed of light. So they, force these muons to whip around this ring 1,000 times, nearly at the speed of light. And so what happened when they did this, the researchers found that the muons might be behaving in a way, in specific, wobbling, that can't be explained because of the influence of a new force of nature. It's just like, what? What's going on here? Because it's doing something that doesn't get explained by the current four forces of nature. So what's going on?
And and I want to mention real quick that in the picture here, I mean, it's a very complex piece of machinery and that kind of thing, but also it shows that how impressive CERN with the Large Hadron Collider, when they found the Higgs boson particle and stuff like that. Big news many years ago. No one cares anymore, but no, it's still very cool. That one, Ralph, was 5 miles in diameter. This one is 15 meter in diameter. So it really goes to show just how technically challenging I guess the CERN one was, to be 5 miles of this whole thing, but still to be able to pull off different experiments with smaller ones. It's still very cool. I mean, it's really so it's not conclusive. I'm kind of curious because Ralph, I guess why it's kind of so cool is like, well, if there's a fifth one, then everything has to be rewritten, right? I don't know. Well,
yeah, you're right. They say it's going to kind of upend the whole thinking about physics fundamentally. So that's part of it. A couple of concluding comments here from the article. The more data will be needed to confirm these results, but if they're verified, it could mark the beginning of a revolution in physics. Exactly to your point there, Ben. And this recent announcement, by the way, builds on results announced in 2021, in which the Fermilab team first suggested the possibility of a fifth force of nature. They've been working on this for a couple of years, right? And since then, the research team has gathered more data and reduced the uncertainty of their measurements by a factor of 2, according to Dr. Brendan Casey, a senior scientist at Fermilab. Now, one last thought here. Although the evidence is strong, the Fermilab team hasn't yet got conclusive proof. So there's your kind of reality check here. And the other reality check too, Ben, that occurred to me, are we talking about an exercise here, noble, amazing, but pure science? Or could there be practical applications if they can fully understand this fifth force of nature? And if by doing so, could this translate into practical applications that could somehow benefit us? Or are we talking about something that's going to remain purely just science curiosity stuff? And either way is okay, but that was one question that none of the articles I looked at addressed. In other words, I didn't see any articles that said, if they figure this out, we could harness this to do X, Y, and Z, or we could do something. No, I didn't see that part. So if anybody out there has that, let us know. I'd like to know.
Feel free to email us live at computeramerica.com. But my completely rudimentary understanding of this might be, Ralph, it's like, knowing all the forces influencing your calculations, be it for space travel, be it for timekeeping, be it for whatever. And really, my first one is like timekeeping is that, the more complete the standard model is, the more accurate you can get. Let's say, the atomic clock, can get even more accurate. And the more accuracy in the atomic clock, like it's not just cool, what time it is. It's more like all the calculations and all the simulations and everything that we do based off that exact timing down to the point, 0.00000, however many zeros timing get better. So what I'm thinking, Ralph, is that by knowing that this exists and start to develop a standard model, and everything just gets a little bit more accurate. And of course, and then on top of that, there's a whole nother field of, what is this wobble, and, scientists have to go out and, quantify all of that. So it's a whole nother discipline in science that they get to explore. And hopefully it makes everything else a little bit more accurate because we know more of the standard model. So that's what I think.
It's like I say, if anybody out there listening and watching the show today, you have some input, we welcome it, because
for sure
that was the part that sort of left me going, okay, where do we go from here? But anyway, fun stuff, very theoretical stuff.
Yep. So story number one, and really it is pretty exciting because you don't get too many of those aha moments, in a generation. But story number one, story number two, and we can go ahead and talk about this one, Nikola, which we've talked about on the show many a times. It's always fun kind of watching their journey, and despite all the hiccups in the background in the corporate side, what they're trying to do on the technology side is very exciting. So let's talk about story number two.
Yes, we're going to come right back down to earth in terms of something that I can much better understand, and that's the whole world of hydrogen and electric freight trucks. But anyway, here's the headline. Freight truck maker Nikola, which I'm sure is named after Nikola Tesla, now offering electric and hydrogen fuel cell powered big rigs, freight trucks. And so for me, the key trend here to watch is, I'll call it green trucking. And this is coming. Now, it's not saying that this is the first time ever someone's tried to make a freight truck with hydrogen fuel cells or all electric. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this story struck me as being a really concrete step toward making this a reality and bringing this to the real world. This comes from an outfit, a publication called EV Pulse, which was new to me, a story by Craig Cole. I really enjoyed this story a lot. And the next story, too, is kind of related, but in the aviation field. So let's get into this. A company called Nikola is looking to revolutionize heavy hauling with battery electric and fuel cell powered Class 8 trucks. Timeout. In the United States, trucks are organized into 8 classes, with Class 7-8 being considered heavy duty, the kind of freight trucks you see on the highway, the big rigs, right? And there's a link there to explain that too, if you want to get into that. Now, Nikola currently offers 2 trucks. So we're not talking about theoretical. We're not talking about, 10 years. We're talking about now. So they have an all-electric Tre, TRE-BEV, which stands for 3 battery electric vehicle, and a hydrogen-fueled Tre, FCEV, which stands for 3 fuel cell electric vehicle. And both are based. What's interesting here, folks, is that both of these vehicles, they didn't design everything from the ground up all new. They said, let's take an existing freight truck from an outfit called Iveco, IVECO. They have the Iveco S-Way semi-freight truck, the big freight truck in Europe. And so they worked with these guys, and there's a picture of that in the show notes. And they said, let's take that basic body, as it were, that basic framework, and let's convert it into an all-electric or hydrogen fuel cell electric composite kind of solution. So that's what's going on with this company. So the Tre BEV features a whopping 733 kilowatt hours of lithium-ion battery spread across 9 separate but serviceable modules. And this provides a manufacturer estimated range of 330 miles, though this will vary, of course. But 330 miles for a big rig, that's pretty decent range. So expect the range to increase when the Tre BEV is operated in urban areas where regenerative braking is frequently used and speeds are lower, though this figure will likely decrease when the truck is operated on interstate for extended periods of time. So a little qualifier there, but still that range is pretty significant for that size of a rig. And then as for charging performance, Nikola says the Tre BEV big rig can hit 80% charge in 90 minutes when hooked up to what the author calls a thundering 350 kilowatt power source. So you can imagine in the future we'll have truck stops that are going to have these incredibly powerful recharging units. So with a twin motor axle assembly that provides 645 continuous horsepower, the Tre BEV offers a top speed of 70 miles per hour. And the truck also can support a gross combined weight rating of 82,000 pounds. So that's your all-electric version of this vehicle. Now, the second member of the team here is the hydrogen fueled Tre FC EV, and has the same gross combined weight as the Tre BEV, the all-electric one, and utilizes the same axle assembly. Though in this application, it provides only 536 continuous horsepower. So it's a little less horsepower, but this gets interesting, at least I think it is. 5 hydrogen tanks, 3 behind the cab and 2 along the frame, store enough hydrogen to give the Tre FC EV an estimated range of 500 miles. An undeniably impressive figure, so the author of the article says. And even more remarkable is the refueling time, which Nikola says can take as little as 20 minutes. And this was interesting to me. The author says, which is comparable to topping off the tank of a traditional diesel-powered rig. I never thought about how long does it take to fill up those gigantic tanks on a typical diesel. Who knew it was 20 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that surprised me. But so they're saying it's comparable. It's the same kind of experience. So the trucking industry can't say, oh, that's all nice, but I can't have my guys and gals standing around for hours. No, it's the same time as it is to fill up with diesel.
Yeah, it's
that's great.
Really good to not have too many shortfalls from traditional. That's good.
Exactly right. And then it says here, a Bosch sourced fuel cell stack uses all the stored hydrogen to generate electricity, which gets routed to a 164 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. Electricity then flows from this pack to the electric motors as needed. So I think the second truck is the most interesting one to me because, again, it's this hybrid of hydrogen and electricity all in one package. So it's real, it's here, but it's a trend to keep watching. We're going to see, I think, more and more of this. Ralph, Nikola is one of those companies that we follow pretty closely on the day-to-day program of Compute America because they have so much drama around them. And I think that's something to kind of keep in mind is that, the fact that they're coming out with trucks that are being produced and being bought by people, and you're going to start seeing these on the road, really if you're lucky because they're selling like 20 or 30 at a time. But Ralph, I don't know if you remember the founder of Nikola, Mr. Trevor Milton, late last year was found guilty of fraud based on what his work with Nikola. They put out a promo video last summer of one of these trucks, rolling down the road, and it was like a drone shot. It was very scenic, and he said, these are our trucks. We're going to sell them soon. Here's a video of one rolling down the road, and what happened with that one, Ralph? It's so funny, and I love bringing it up. Again, they seem to have moved past it. They've moved past their drama. They're starting to produce trucks, which is something that I never thought they'd actually do, but they're doing it. But what they did, Ralph, was they towed their prototype. Gosh. They towed their prototype truck to the top of a gently sloping hill.
and let it coast down the hill, and then took a video of it. And they never once said, Ralph, here's our truck under its own power, driving down the road. They said, here's our truck moving down a road. And they technically never said it was, using electric power or anything. But yeah, the founder was convicted of fraud, and Nikola had all these funding problems behind the scenes. They were burning cash. They had like this factory they were going to build that was going to be like the Tesla Gigafactory. It was supposed to be like twice as big as that thing.
Wow.
And all they ever had after like $1 billion were like some very crappy 3D renderings of what it was going to look like one day after like $1 billion. But yeah, they overhauled everything. They actually are producing trucks, and it's so good to see because the capabilities seem like something that should hit long haul trucking first. Just these long haul, cleaner burning, or really not burning, cleaner fueled trucks that I think everyone kind of wants, and they look so slick too. They really do.
Well, and again, I think with all the troubles and issues you mentioned with the company in the past, hopefully this marks, as you alluded to, a turnaround. Maybe now they're finally on a good track. Everything's legit.
They have done a large overhaul of corporate side, manufacturing side. So it's really amazing that they're able to put this out. And again, the video. EV Pulse that you linked to really goes in depth and shows all the different parts of it.
Yes.
So
very
cool.
Great video. That is really good. And again, EV Pulse is an interesting outlet that's brand new to me, and one I'll keep an eye on because they've got some good stuff going on. Well, there you go.
Yep. Yeah. No. Story number 2. And sorry, just Nikola, the company, has so much baggage with it. It's hard not to mention it on the backside.
I'm glad you did.
But again, they have a car, which is something that Faraday Future can't even claim. So there you go. So story number 2, story number 3, and like you said, a bit connected, but this one goes through the air, and something that we've talked about on the show in the past, but a trend means that eventually it will become a thing. So story number 3.
Yeah. So story number 3, now we'll go up into the air. We'll leave the road behind and start taking off. So a key trend to monitor, in my opinion, hydrogen-powered flight is closer to takeoff than ever. And this comes from Popular Science, a story by Andrew Paul. I've done many of his stories in the past. He's great. And we've got links again and pictures and everything in the show notes. Come out to computeramerica.com and get this information if you want to dive into this. And the point here that Ben was also alluding to is we're not saying this is the first time ever hydrogen-powered planes. No, what we're saying is these are incremental steps. This is a peg in the ground of reality getting us closer and closer and closer to this truly being something that's going to happen in the aviation field. So we've got a video here. What you'll see in the show notes, there's a video to 2 of the different companies and aircraft we're going to talk about. So here we go. Despite only recently taking to the skies, hydrogen-powered planes are already assuaging some skeptics about their role within a more sustainable airline industry. That's the trend. They're now getting demonstrations that are really proving the viability of this concept. And while current prototypes won't be making transoceanic flights anytime soon, their proofs of concept, like the 2 vehicles we're going to talk about today, could guide better, more efficient, and larger craft in the years to come. That's the trend I'm trying to stress here. So it goes on to say 2 California-based startups have recently run multiple successful test flights for their experimental hydrogen gas fuel cell propeller planes. Both prototypes involve retrofitting existing turboprops. It's kind of like the truck story we just did. They took an existing freight truck and retrofitted it, right? So in this case, we have 2 aircraft that involve retrofitting existing turboprops to accommodate hydrogen fuel technology, albeit in slightly different ways to achieve different goals. All right, first, Universal Hydrogen, that's the name of the company, excuse me, Universal Hydrogen's 40-passenger Dash 8 prototype, for example, pairs an original jet fuel engine alongside a 1.2 megawatt fuel cell and 800 kilowatt electric motor. So this is a hybrid, sort of like your Prius. Okay. According to the company's CTO, Mark Cousin, the Dash 8 has successfully flown a total of 9 times, reaching an altitude of 10,000 feet, while at speeds of upwards to 170 knots. That's 195 miles per hour. So pretty, and they're cool looking aircraft too, I think. Yeah. Again, though, they're retrofitted existing planes, and that's the smart part of it. Instead of trying to go from the ground up with all new, they say, take an aircraft, we can retrofit it, get in the air, and show this it's going to work.
Yeah, and really that's what's going to, I think, really take hold, because, so many times we've had products on the show that's like, we can revolutionize Wi-Fi in your home. And it's like, great, what does it take? And it's like, well, you just have to rewire all of your house, run all new lines through every wall of your house. And also you need new equipment that, they'd have to pay for. It's like, anyone can create something from the ground up and make it better than what we currently have, but to retrofit, that's going to make more of an impact in so many cases.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I love this story on multiple levels. So here's the other aircraft. So meanwhile, Zero Avia, that's the name of the company, modified 19-seat Dornier, I hope I'm saying that right, 228, has flown 10 times at 5,000 feet while traveling 150 knots. That's about 173 miles per hour without any issues. They've had 10 really good, flawless test flights. The company's twin-engine turboprop includes one standard fuel setup as well as a 600 kilowatt combination of hydrogen fuel cells and batteries. So this is a really interesting hybrid aircraft. So we'll leave it at that for now. Let's watch this and see where they go. And I couldn't agree with you more, Ben. The whole idea of it's practical because you're an airline company. Let's say you're one of these regional small aircraft companies, and you've got this fleet of these planes like the Dash 8, and you say to yourself, oh, heck, I could collaborate with these guys, retrofit a few of my planes, give it a try. Wow, I'm saving so much money on fuel costs, and it's environmentally friendly, and I think my customers will like it. Away you go.
It's like the Boeing planes, and that's why even one canceling of a Boeing order makes such an impact. They spend hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars making each of these Boeing planes, and they expect them to be in service for 30, 40 years at a time. And Ralph, you're not going to just throw away a plane that you just spent $6 billion on, but if you can retrofit it, hey, maybe you can do something.
Yeah. In fact, you kind of allude to a possible trend would be a whole new world, a whole new jobs industry of retrofitting. We could see a whole retrofitting world come to think of it. That's kind of fun to think about.
Yeah, for sure. And I really like these images, if you're watching the video portion, but of the fuel cell batteries. And that's why I assume that they're loading on here. They're these giant, almost like batteries that just slide into the fuselage of the plane. And they're super slick. It's compared to obviously the lines and the gas and pumping the gas into the plane. You just kind of load these things on like they're almost luggage, and they're like giant batteries that they just kind of put into the back of the plane. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of very clever. I guess the only negative would be, well, then now where am I going to put the luggage and the storage and all this sort of stuff, because you're using up that.
I mean, the fuel tank had to take up space too, right?
Sure, of course. Yeah. So I mean, it's an interesting balancing act.
Yeah, for sure. But still, and really starting with the smaller planes makes all the sense in the world. So nice images there on story number 3. Story number 4. If you couldn't see those images, maybe story number 4 could help you. And the gift of sight, super cool. If you don't have, what is it, like, humans are predominantly sight-based creatures. Our primary sense is our sight. When we lose it, that's like 85% of what we kind of depend on, other than touch and smell and hearing and all that kind of thing. Sight is super important, but hey, story number 4 might help those who had that taken away from them.
That's right. And this is an example every Friday, usually every Friday, almost without exception. We end the segment, the official segment, with a medical technology or science related story. And this fits that category very well. The headline here is United Kingdom scientists regrow retinal cells in the lab using nanotechnology. And I'll jump ahead a little bit here. When your retinal cells die, to date, that's it. Sorry, gone. We're talking about regrowing retinal cells. Wow. And this is in the lab, so this is experimental stuff, folks. It's not out there in the real world yet, but stay tuned. Got this from sciencealert.com, a story by Tessa Koumoundouros. And we got the link, of course, in the show notes for you. So in efforts to tackle macular degeneration, the leading cause of blindness in developed countries, researchers have recruited nanotechnology to help regrow retinal cells. Now, macular degeneration is a form of central vision loss, which has massive social mobility and mental consequences to what you were alluding to, Ben. It's just terrible. It impacts hundreds of millions of people globally and is increasing, sorry to say, in prevalence. All right. So what is macular degeneration? If I could say it, the degeneration is the consequence of damaged retinal pigment cells. Our bodies are unable to grow and replace these cells once they start dying. So scientists have been exploring alternative methods to replace them and the membrane within which they sit. So this is a big challenge. So here's a quote. In the past, scientists would grow cells on a flat surface, which is not biologically relevant, explains Anglia Ruskin University biochemist Barbara Piersionek. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. And she goes on to note, quote, using these new techniques, the cell line has been shown to thrive in the 3D environment provided by the scaffolds. And we'll explain that here in a moment. Nottingham Trent University biomedical scientist Biola Egbowan and colleagues fabricated these 3D scaffolds with polymer nanofibers and coated them with steroid to reduce inflammation. And folks, this is another story, as I said at the very beginning of today's show. I don't fully understand this. I'm not going to fool you, but it's so important and so profoundly, the implications of this are so important for medical and eye health that I just couldn't resist it. So I don't claim to fully understand it. So with that qualifier, let's continue. Using a technique called electrospinning, which produces nanometer wide fibers by squirting a molten polymer through a high voltage field, the team was able to keep the scaffolding sufficiently thin. The scaffolding meaning the surface upon which they're trying to make these retinal replacement cells. Okay.
My very simple brain thought electrospinning. So they're making cotton candy for everything you stick to. I'm going to assume it's true until someone corrects me, but yeah, let's just assume that. Very nanometer wide fibers. That's crazy.
Yeah, remember, a nanometer is a billionth of a meter, so we're talking about really small stuff here. Now, this next polymer word, I'm going to take it as slow as possible.
Polyacrylonitrile.
Yeah, polyacrylonitrile, I guess. And I know you can go to the show notes if you want to see how that's spelled. I'm not going to torture you with that. So this polyacrylonitrile polymer they use provided mechanical strength. That's its job. The team also used jeffamine polymer, which attracts water, essentially allowing the synthetic scaffold to act as a membrane, to imitate a membrane. Okay. So there's side notes in the show notes here about what this polyacrylonitrile, or sometimes simplified down to the all caps PAN. You can read about that and read about the jeffamine products and so forth. But here's the bottom line. The water attracting ability of the jeffamine polymer material is what helps the cells bind to the scaffold and also encourages their growth. But when the effect is too strong, it's also associated with cell death in previous research. So but people have been playing around with this combination of technologies to solve this retinal problem. But to date, they would throttle it too much and the cells would die. But here's the deal.
A real balance.
That's exactly right. And here's what this is the breakthrough. The team's new formulation seems to be just right as the system increased the growth and longevity of retinal lab cells and kept them viable for at least 150 days. So they're not totally there yet, but this is a big step forward. And here's a quote, "This research has demonstrated for the first time that nanofiber scaffolds treated with the anti-inflammatory substance can enhance growth, differentiation, and functionality of retinal pigment epithelial cells," says Piers Sionek, the research scientist. So that's your big breakthrough here. Wow. And then so many thousands, millions of people suffer from this macular degeneration business. There is hope. I hope it comes soon, because what a great thing this would be.
Yeah, to be able to cure blindness, and people may remember 2 years ago now, I got the laser eye surgery to remove glasses, and that was just nearsightedness. I could still see. Obviously, I just had to squint and look up close. The difference it makes to not have to wear glasses, not have to do anything, and be able to see crystal clear. I mean, even just making my vision better was such a huge boost to my day-to-day. To be able to restore or prevent or slow down or completely stop macular degeneration, I can't imagine how big of a difference that's going to make to so many people. So very, very uplifting. And 150 days today, maybe in a couple years they'll have that up to years at a time, and that would be a viable treatment for people. At that point. Let's hope. Yep, let's hope indeed. But now that's 4 stories. For those of you keeping count, you can erase the chalk marks off your wall. But you may notice at the end of the show notes, Ralph has added a little bit more. What are these, Ralph?
Yeah, a couple of, several honorable mentions. I want to spend time with the first one, but first I'll just jump ahead here. A couple of headlines to check out with links that I thought they're so great stories, but we didn't have time for them, but I didn't want to leave them on the table. So headline here, scientists use DNA to construct material lighter and stronger than steel, from Futurism magazine. Check that one out. That's pretty cool. Kerala University researchers develop eco-friendly, cost-effective solar cell from the new Indian Express, friends in India. That's an interesting story, but I want to spend just a couple of moments on the first honorable mention, because this could have relevance for many of our listeners. Hey, Ben, I don't know about you. Right behind my desk here is a storage closet, and I've got probably 4 or 5 computers, old desktops, old laptops, stuff like this, sitting around, and I've been lazy. I haven't recycled them, whatever, never, so forth and so on. But there are a lot of organizations, folks, that will take reasonably old, not too terribly old machines, fix them up. They'll scrub all the data off of them to protect your privacy. They will clean them, retrofit them, and get them out to schools. And here in Portland, Oregon, I'm in the Portland, Oregon area, and this is just an example of the kind of organizations I encourage everyone listening and viewing. If you have old computers, see if your community has somebody like this. This outfit's called freegeek.org, Portland, Oregon group. And here's their mission statement. Free Geek safely and securely refurbishes locally donated technology and gives it back to our community at no or low cost to provide our community's most vulnerable populations with the digital literacy skills they need to succeed and thrive. What cannot be refurbished is recycled in an environmentally responsible manner. You got to love that, right? And I actually had a correspondence with one of their top people, a guy named Stephen Couchman, and he told me there are many organizations coast to coast that follow our model of converting surplus technology into life-changing digital access for our local communities. And he gave a couple examples, such as Free Geek Twin Cities and Free Geek Toronto. So nice. I just fell in love with this idea, and I'm going to get some of my old gear over to them. And by the way, for anybody listening to the show today, August the 18th, Friday, tomorrow, August the 19th, in the Portland, Oregon area, the Free Geek folks are teaming up with Intel and holding hands with the NBC TV affiliate KGW, which has their school supply drive. So tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Intel Hawthorne Farm campus in Hillsboro, just outside of Portland, they're looking for donations of working laptops, computers, and so forth, less than 8 years old. So friends, if you're in the area, want to do this. And again, broadening this out to our total audience, find out if there are organizations like this in your community that are retrofitting refurbishing old computers and getting them out to schools and disadvantaged areas and so forth and so on. I just love this story and love these guys.
It's a really great mission, I think, and some of the stats I have even seen in a little bit. 1 in 5 households in America don't even own a computer. I guess that's the digital divide that they're trying to bridge. And 8 years old is some of those can be pretty decently old, but really, even an 8-year-old computer can still surf the web, get information to people, still provide that, that lifeline for schooling or professional job seeking or otherwise. This is a really great mission. No, really. And I'm glad that they really make an emphasis on protecting those who are donating their stuff, because like you said, so much of it is like personal information and whatnot. But the fact that they're taking such a step to, make sure everything is good to go for not just those receiving it, but those who are being so kind as to give the technology to them, and then they're kind of handling it all themselves. Very nice program, and I couldn't agree more. So if you're in any of those areas, and again, we'll have a link in the show notes to freegeek.org if you want to find out more as well. So Ralph, really, this is a great cause, and obviously it's back to school. It's going to help a lot of kids, hopefully, with these services. So Ralph, I think with that said, that is definitely an uplifting way to kind of end the show. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more, computeramerica.com will have everything there, including freegeek.org link and every other link to every other story that we possibly did. And of course, right at the top, Ralph Bond, you'll see all of his segments and more. And in the show notes, we'll include a link to Ralph's website, which is completely dedicated to Ralph and everything that he does. So you can check that out as well. Ralph, I want to thank you for coming on the program. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you had fun. And every single Friday, Ralph joins us to talk about, science and technology trends. So until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.